Good morning, Drash Ministry friends and family. This is Andy Fred. About a month and a half ago or so, my son Timothy got a chance to go to a concert, a Sidewalk Prophets concert, and their opening act was a man called Curt Anderson. Timothy was really intrigued by Curt Anderson, got to meet him, chat with him for a few minutes, even got to buy a hat from him, and really came home and was talking about one particular moment, a moment when Curt broke a guitar string and continued on with the song a cappella. Had the crowd join in with him, and it was such a moment where Timothy thought, hey, this guy could have made excuses or quit the song or done a million other things, but he chose to go on with what he had, and it made a real impression on Timothy. So we made an effort to contact Curt and really try to figure out a little more about him and get his story, and lo and behold, he agreed to do an interview with us. Now, we're not set up down here at Drash Ministries to do interviews with people, but we gave it a shot, and we had him call in on our phone, and we recorded the conversation. Now, what we want to give you is a unedited version of that conversation. Just Timothy and I sitting on our sets and taping while we talk to Curt Anderson about his life and about his ministry and some other things. Now, it's about 40 minutes long. So you want to watch this video, but you want to watch it at a time where you can really listen to his heart, listen to what he has to say about what it is to be a Christian artist, and specifically what it is for him to be a Christian artist. So join Timothy and I right now as we present to you Curt Anderson. Right, so our first question is, many of our listeners, many of the people that are associated with this ministry, they have no idea who Curt Anderson is. So it would sounds like a great starting point to just kind of get us familiar with you as a person.
I guess the quick background is I live in just south of Nashville, Tennessee, with my wife and my two boys. We've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we've been here for just over a decade. And I'm originally from the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. Spent a good chunk of my life in Ithaca, Michigan, a tiny little farm town in central Michigan. I went to college in Indiana, and then have been here for the last decade. And in that kind of time frame, music has always been one of the things that I wanted to do. I feel like God has given me gifts, a gift of connecting with people, and music is one of the tools that I've been given to be able to go out and show His love to people. And so over the last number of years, I've had I think like 4 singles on the radio around the world that have all spent upwards of 25, 30 weeks in the top 30 charts, and every one of it, my music has become some of the most played music on Christian radio around the world. Not as much in the U.S., except in around the U.S. I'm in 30, 40,000 some stores, and the Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Kroger brands, stores in the mall. If you've been shopping somewhere, you've probably heard me, even if you haven't heard me on the radio. And then there are, a ton of stations around the U.S. that do play me, but it's not quite to the extent as my airplay on every other continent. So I spend most of my time traveling around the world, and so I'm in Hong Kong and Sydney and Paris and London and Bangkok and Casablanca and Cairo, Cambodia, all these, nearly 60 countries so far. And now this fall, I'm out on this tour with Sidewalk Prophets, and these few months will be the longest I've been in the U.S. without leaving the country in probably 5 or 6 years. So there you go.
Wow, that in all is absolutely amazing. But one of the things that I was telling Timothy about the other day when we were talking about this was, I think a lot of the us who are living in the States, we tend to think that Christian music originated here and is really only here, and then we send people out to other countries. But what you're saying is, no, there's a whole Christian market out there that we don't even understand.
Oh yeah, and here's the thing: like, you're not alone. Even people that work at record labels, the Christian record labels, a lot of them don't even know it exists either.
Wow.
The sad part is, I've been the station, like, so I started getting all these emails from radio stations in Kenya and Switzerland and Korea and in Australia. Australia has always been one of my biggest markets, so radio has always been just massive there for me. But Ireland and England and just all these places saying, hey, our listeners love your music. They're really connecting with it. You're kind of what's been meeting to our people. Let us know if you're ever in Nairobi. and so I'm like, you know what? If these are the places that they're clearly excited about this, so let's make it happen. So,
wow.
I grew up traveling internationally with my family anyway, but not to the extreme extent that I do now. But yeah, like, I have conversations with people around Nashville and in the music industry and at record labels who literally don't even know that there's a Christian radio station in Switzerland playing their music. And I visited a big station on the island of Mindanao in the Philippines, and they said I was literally the first artist they had ever had in studio for an interview in person. So, that's I've taken that as a part of my calling, that I get to go to all these places that that people don't really go, and artists don't really go, and say, hey, you matter just as much as anyone in the U.S., no matter what the size of your listener base is or whatever.
Oh, praise the Lord. That's exciting. And when you get these opportunities to go out and about like this, what are you seeing that maybe we don't see here in the States? What is it that really catches your eyes as you go out to these other countries and to these places that obviously the normal person who's involved in the Christian music arena isn't necessarily taking advantage of?
Yeah, I think as far as like Christian music taking advantage of it, I think there's a little bit different to my setup, to where I'm able to travel a lot more streamlined than a lot of people. So I think for an artist or a band who at minimum has to travel with 5 or 6 people, it can be limiting. So I think for a lot of people, there's a reason why they can't go and do it with their setup. But for me, getting to go and do it and seeing these things, I think one of the things that I have been just continually struck by is that wherever you go in the world, people are largely similar. We have so many more similarities than we have differences, and people are on a whole good. There, of course, are awful people in the U.S. There's awful people in plenty of other countries that want to do harm to people, but on a whole, you go to places and you're welcomed with loving open arms, and to get to see faith lived out in the different cultures of from being on a stage being on a multi-million-dollar stage at Sydney Olympic Park, to being on a stage in the bush of Kenya, in a village, a stage that was cut and built by hand the day of the show, nailed together and everything, and you see like thousands of people come from villages all over, and get to participate, even though the language barrier might be there. I just to see the faith can be lived out differently in different places, just based on your life and your experience. But it's no less it's no less impactful anywhere, I think.
Amen.
So, going with that about faith being lived out in many different areas, can you tell us a little bit about your faith and relationship with God?
Yeah. Look, I grew up in a Christian home. It's been part of our family lineage from as early as I can remember. Past my great grandparents and on down or on up. But for me, I think the big twist for me came my freshman year of high school, where I really started to think about, okay, well, if I'm calling myself a Christian, if I believe in what Jesus did for me, how is that actually changing how I interact with the world? And so I started really trying to be conscious and aware of the way I treated everyone around my school, and even people that I might not really have gotten along with. And so that effort for me really started to transform who I was and how people interacted with me to the point where, there weren't really, it started to change pieces of the school. And so for me, that became who I was. That, like, look, I want to make sure that my words, my actions, the way I love people reflects who Christ is. And that even if I'm not talking about Jesus, or even if I'm not using words, that people are going to be able to experience who Jesus is just by who I am. And look, like everyone else, I fail and I drop the ball on that all the time. But my goal is that people will be able to know something is different. They'll be able to experience Christ just by interacting and kind of experiencing who I am.
That is fantastic, and it really fits in with the ministry that we have down here at the Epicenter and at Drash Ministries. We believe in what we call the 3 R's, which is that God is about recovering people, God is about restoring people, and then God is about sending people out with a sense of resurgence. To be who they are so they can do what they're created to do. And when I listen to your music, it seems to me that your words are extremely powerful, but they fall, in what we're trying to do. They're offering hope to people who need to be recovered. They're offering, this sense of restoration, that God is for you and those kind of things. But then I love the fact that a lot of your lyrics offer a sense of resurgence, that you can still be who God wants you to be. And so when I listen to you say what you just said, that answers that question for me, that really is at the heart of what your music is about.
I appreciate hearing that. Yeah, I think even in music, different people are called. God calls and equips people to do and be different things. I think there is a place for the Chris Tomlins of the world, the core worship leaders. There's a place for the person in a hardcore band who's going into places that no one else is going to go. There is a place for each kind of artist. And I think for me, one of the things that I have realized, and I've been in Nashville for 10 years, and as you start kind of getting into the industry and writing with tons of different songwriters and having all the meetings and this label they'd like to hear this or hear you do this or this. And the thing that I had to grow into and become comfortable with is, look, here's who I am. And I need to do what I can to, I want to be commercial, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm not afraid to be who I am and to write from my perspective. And my perspective is showing people a love, showing them hope, that there's redemption no matter what they're going through, and there's fun. I love getting to go to churches and lead worship, but as an artist, I'm not a worship artist, but yeah, so I get to just kind of be real in my music, and I think as I'm writing towards the music for the next couple years, that's gonna start coming to fruition even more, where I really get to just write for the perspective of life where I am right now, and I assume that's kind of where other people are too.
So, again, I love that, and I love the fact that you're able to define what it is that you feel like you're called to do. But and I'm expecting that it's similar in nature to being a pastor. There's a lot of pressure, even though you have a desire to stay in tune with what God has called you to do, and I love the fact that you gave value to the other forms of music, whether it's worship or whatever it is. But how do you balance out staying true to who you are with the pressure of wanting those top 4 singles or wanting to write in such a way that it would please people? I would imagine by now you know how to write a top 10 hit.
Yeah. I think one thing I've learned is that if you go in with the mentality of so I get to co-write. I get to write with some massive, incredible, successful songwriters, and you put it on the calendar and say, okay, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on such and such day, we're going to go in and we're going to write these songs. I took a couple friends, a producer and a songwriter, to Bangkok a number of months ago, and we sat in a villa and we wrote songs for 8 days. And so in those moments, it's like, okay, it's pressure. But at the same time, what I've learned is if you go into those situations and say, okay, I have to write a hit. I got to write a hit right now. You're probably going to fail. But if you go into the situation and allow yourself to just write and write what feels good, and keep refining and refining until it feels and says what you want to say, I think that's what connects with people. It's a lot of songwriters will tell you, man, it's the song that I never guessed would be the hit. That was the hit. And that's it. It's writing from a place of honesty and accessibility. I think you've got to have an accessibility to it, that you're not writing in this ultra, for me anyway, for a commercial standpoint, for radio, you need to write in a way that is that's stirring and moving, but still accessible to people. They get what's happening. They don't need a dictionary to figure out what you're saying. But staying true to it really is just kind of removing the pressure. I've found if I just say, you know what, my goal is not to write for this radio station. My goal is to write a song that makes me feel good, that makes me want to move, that brightens my day, that says something to me, and hopefully it's going to connect with other people in the same way. And I think as a pastor, I think it's kind of this, it's similar. There's an enormous amount of pressure as you're leading and guiding kind of the faith of so many people. But within that, I think it's, and this is a total outsider perspective, so take no 2 cents away from this, but I feel like it's being true to who God has called you to be in leading these people, and encouraging and encouraging their faith, and teaching what God has to teach them.
Yeah, well, I think you're spot on, and I appreciate that. Too often, we come up with a message, and we think, well, that's not going to go over so well, and it's always the ones that you think aren't going to go over well that go over well, and God just kind of works that way. But I love object lessons. Talk about real life things all the time, and we get the pleasure of living on a little hobby farm with some horses and cows and things like that. And so much of what I speak on is about from that perspective. But what I find is that we have a church actually up near Buffalo, and the perspective is completely different. They don't even really, most of them wouldn't see a cow on a regular basis, and those kind of things. And so, so often I find myself having to think about their perspective. So tell me a little bit about how you write music and can actually think of other people's perspective that maybe you haven't experienced.
I think, look, that is, from traveling around the globe, that is so evident. Like a church in Nashville, in the Bible Belt, southern zone, church is a part of the fabric of life. But in the Northeast, that's not true. You go to Australia, and Australia is you have Christian communities who are very passionate, but whereas Nashville, you've got 5 mega church campuses on one block. You go to Australia, and Hillsong and Planet Shakers, and those two are very much anomalies within the Australian culture. Most Australian churches are about 200 people. But you go there, and it's culturally different too, because you'll hear a pastor drop a couple words in a sermon that might make an American blush, like, oh, did he just say that in a sermon? But that's it. It's culture.
Right.
It's part of the culture. And so for me, when I'm writing songs, I'm trying to be, I don't get terribly specific. Look, I think for me, it's the human experience. We're all, no matter where we're from, in some way, we're going through similar things, whether we're struggling with financial issues or issues with family, or struggling with there's so many things that each of us struggle with that they tend to be similar around the world, just in different ways. Like a person who lives in a village in Uganda is probably suffering from some different things than a person who's living in downtown Los Angeles. But the heart of it, the root of it, I feel is the same. So for a song, if you tap into the root of where these issues arise, or the root of what these issues and these struggles do to us internally, I think that's where I try to capture my songs. I don't tend to go too much to the specifics, to the surface area issues, but I try to dive into the root of what it does within our human condition, and write from that perspective. And I feel like that is what becomes relatable to people of all cultures and all socioeconomic backgrounds and all faith backgrounds. That a Muslim can relate to the same condition as a Christian. They can relate to the same condition as an atheist. They can relate to the same condition as a Buddhist, whatever. Humans are all going through the same things. I feel like Jesus has provided us the way to cope and to have hope through those things, and from there it's our job to share that hope with others.
Amen. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, good.
So I was at the Jamestown concert that you were at with Sidewalk Prophets, and you mentioned that your guitar string broke in the middle of a song.
Yeah.
Immediately you continued leading the song a cappella. What are some of the obstacles and hardships you have faced as a Christian musician?
Oh gosh, look. So when you do something enough, I think in any job, as a pastor, as an electrician, as a tax accountant, as a musician, you are going to run into. You do it long enough, you're going to run into any issue you can possibly face. And for me, the thing that I have learned over the years is that I want to make sure whatever happens, that the audience doesn't know it. Either the audience isn't going to know, or I'm going to use that to turn it into a moment that they're going to remember.
Amen.
So, for me, like I think one good example, the first song I did in the concert is a song called "For Us," and right in the middle of the song, after the bridge, I come down to this really mellow section. I do a little talking, and then I do this little riff thing on this "Fear Not" thing, that "Fear not," and I kind of build it up there into this falsetto thing. Well, that piece of the song came from a complete mistake. I was in a concert. Where was I? I was in somewhere in Queensland, Australia. I think it was like 5 years ago, maybe. And I was doing the song, and after the bridge, I accidentally went to the wrong chord. And I'm like, okay, so I played a couple more chords. And so sometimes when I make a mistake, I'll just intentionally make that mistake again to make it look like the first time was on purpose. And so as I kept playing these chords, I started talking a little bit, and then this, that melody I was kind of singing started to come to my head. So I just started singing that, and then I kept building it and building it and building it until it got into these falsetto runs and things that you saw the other day, and it became this moment that just really connected with the crowd, and people were kind of going nuts over it. And so now, from that mistake, I have included it, even in when I'm doing the song full band, like when I have a band with me, I still include that section. From that mistake, I've taken that and used it almost every single time I've performed that song now for the last 5 years. So I think really mistakes and hardships and things that happen, it's our job to figure out, look, things happen. How do I take this and take this junk and make it something good? How do I make this a moment that people are going to remember? And so for me in a concert, same thing with the string breaking. I kept playing I played the chord a couple times, and the guitar seemed to stay, be in a good position. And then all of a sudden, a couple chords just stopped making noise. So I'm like, okay, we'll abandon this, and we'll turn this into a moment where it's just the crowd singing it a cappella. And I think for me, especially on stage, I'll say that some of the mistakes and the most crazy things that have happened, including like once where I was in this showcase for a bunch of record label people, and my piano crashed to the ground. The stand broke out from under me. So I bent down on my knees and I kept playing, and then I still kept playing as people came and lifted the keyboard trying to fix it. And those moments become, when you use them correctly, when you turn them into moments for people to latch onto, it becomes something that made the event far better than it would have been had things gone to plan. So I think that's kind of the same thing for life, that crap happens. Junk happens in life. How are we going to respond to it to make it something that can be used for good?
That is such an incredibly important thing within the Christian life. So thank you for sharing that. I think that is important. And as a father, I was super impressed that my son came home from the concert. I wasn't able to go. And that was what he wanted to talk about. He wanted to talk about how you took a bad moment and made it a great moment. So with that in mind, and also with telling you, well done, you made an impression on my son that is everlasting.
Awesome.
What is it, if you were going to sum up with one thing, what is it that you hope that people come away from your concert thinking, more importantly thinking than feeling, but what is it that you want them to come away with?
Yeah, I think at the very core of it all, I want people to walk away having had an experience that has left them feeling loved and filled with hope. And with the goal that maybe some of them are going to connect the dots that hope for me comes from Christ. Hopefully that comes through. Maybe for some of them it's just going to be, man, I feel good. I feel like I've got some hope for, to get through tonight, to get through tomorrow now. And maybe down the track they'll connect that to where that hope for me comes from. But I want people to walk away feeling like they've got hope for the future, and that they're loved. And from there, that's what I use the songs for. For me, it's like my goal isn't to get on stage and have people hear these songs exactly, hear this 3.5-minute song exactly as I wrote it, exactly like this, because this is my piece of art. No, like, how can I do this song, and how much of the song, and what order, what arrangement, what can I do with this song to make this time period something that this audience connects with? So it's why the second song that I did on acoustic, that I do that sing-along part, because that's a way to connect with the audience. How do I perform these songs that makes people feel connected, and that makes them know, that makes them get to experience and not just hear about that hope and that love? And if people walk away from that, look, if you don't remember my songs a month or two from now, I don't care. Like, hopefully you'll listen to them again. Hopefully you'll become a fan and keep listening and supporting. But at the root of it, if people walk away having, feeling like they've got hope and that they're loved, then and they've had an experience that provided that. That's the goal of the show for me.
Amen.
Can you tell us a little bit about your upcoming show called The Adventure?
Oh, let's see. I can't say much. I can say I've gotten to, I've been traveling around the world for my whole life, and now having seen and experienced so many countries, the thing that I'm really excited about is getting to pass that experience on to other people. And pass it on to people who maybe would never get to do it otherwise. And so the idea is we'll get to travel to some incredible locations, and have people experience some incredible things. And the idea of the show at the end of the day is it's the same exact thing as my music. Like, I want people to feel encouraged and empowered to step out of their comfort zones, to do something new, and to know that that there's hope for the future, no matter what's going on in their life. And so that's the idea of the show. So we'll go into production for the pilot within the next handful of months, and then from there we're working with some. We've got some incredible people in the pipeline who are interested in it, that will hopefully be able to make it into something that can spread far and wide. So we'll kind of see where we go from there.
It is a fantastic idea. Just getting to
thank you.
Getting to see people in that kind of setting, getting to watch people. We are such a finished product society, and there's such value in the process. There's such value in every part of the process. And again, first of all, we just want to thank you for taking this time with us, because your heart absolutely matches up with the heart of our ministry and what we want to see God do in and through us and through other people. So as we wrap this up, and you really finished it really well with your with your last, who you want people to see you as, and what you want them to come
Yeah.
away from. So, because most of the people that we're gonna, be reaching, that are gonna see this or hear this, they're not going to know much about you. So why don't you finish up by telling us a little bit about maybe the Sidewalk Prophets tour that you're on right now, but then how is it that people are going to get to, how can they reach you? How can they keep up with you? How can they keep track on this adventure stuff?
For sure. So the hub for everything that I do is CurtAndersonMedia.com. So CURT, CurtAndersonMedia.com. And that will include everything from music, and as we are able to share things, that'll include things for the adventure, which hopefully in the coming months we'll open up the nomination and application process for people to apply to be on the show again. But from here, that takes them to Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and everything. And that also shows all the events that are coming up. I am on the Sidewalk Prophets tour through November 10th. We'll wrap that up in Oklahoma. The last date is in Oklahoma. But we've got dates starting. We head out again tonight to Ohio and Virginia and somewhere else. But all that information is right at CurtAndersonMedia.com. And if people want to reach out, there's a contact link that'll go to my team, and we can connect and that'll take them everywhere that they can connect.
Oh, well, that's fantastic, and we certainly, again, we appreciate your time and just what you shared and the heart behind what you shared, and that's important. What we said we want to do down here at Drash Ministries is just really, connect people with real people doing real things in a real world. And man, it sounds like, just listening to your music, it sounds like that's you, and now listening to you expound upon that is definitely you, and we appreciate that. So,
well, I appreciate hearing that, and it's been a pleasure to chat with you, and thank you so much for the time and for the interest and sympathy. So glad to hear you had such a great time at the show, and hopefully we'll get to connect in the future and do something together again.